Hello, and thank you for your interest. This is a second video about Aaron Berry's book, Closer to God. I want to discuss a few points and add further comments, especially address essential contradictions. Surely, this might be demanding. Anyway, it's worth it, at least from my perspective. We are talking about very meaningful topics. There will also be a few quotes to listen to. To make things a little easier for myself, I am now approaching the author directly. Hi, Aaron. Do you want reasonable feedback? Here you are. I'm curious to see your reactions and answers on this. The first topic is about reality. You deny reality exists and claim reality to be just a concept. On the other hand, you also claim certain things to be real. My standpoint sounds different, though I guess it's the same thing from a different perspective. Here's what I think. Reality is a relative term. A dream is also real for the dreamer. Pain hurts, even if it is an illusion. Recognizing the illusory nature of the world does not solve our problems, nor does it alleviate the pain. Life is a dream. At the same time, it is real, and there is no contradiction in that. Both are true. The laws of nature are valid, even if nature does not actually exist. The astral plane is more subtle, more luminous, and closer to absolute reality than the physical plane. Nevertheless, it is no more real to its astral inhabitants than the physical world to its physical inhabitants. Let's look at your claims in your book. As a conclusion, you state, "So I was pleasantly surprised and comforted to hear that there isn't anyone on the whole world that has found the answer. We are all bewildered. We are all grasping at thin air, and we are all happy to continue doing so." I think this synopsis is as good as it will ever get, which will keep humanity busy for eternity, or whenever we bring about our destruction as we know life to be in this paradigm. The beauty of the cosmos is that it will hide that light switch forever, because the greatest human attribute is its hunger for knowledge, which is why we have been created. To self-discover our collective nature of being self-creating cosmic consciousness. That means the truth can never be found. We are doomed to stay in illusion, darkness, stupidity forever. This is a horrible, devastating judgment. How exactly do you justify this attitude? Why would anyone try to discover truth and reality with such an attitude? I consider this to be negative and not true. It's depressing and seems like an argument inspired by someone who does not want us to do research. I am not happy about being bewildered, and to me, it is clear we can get through these veils and conquer all the layers step by step. You also state this: if I haven't directly experienced something, as far as I am concerned, it simply doesn't exist. Everything else is some other person's experience or fiction, and no reality of mine. Comment: does that make sense? Why would you disrespect other people's experiences? Why would you expect others to believe your experiences to be true or reflect the truth? Why would anyone listen to you then? Your truth is the only truth. Why would you even listen to others then? Obviously, you do listen to others and consider their experiences to be real, isn't it? Imagine someone would refuse to speak with you about a worldly topic like economy or technology, with the argument, "We can't be certain, don't know anything and never will, and there's no reality anyway." Is that reasonable? Another explanation about reality and illusion can be found in movies. In Matrix, people die physically when they die virtually. Their virtual reality is also the true reality. Even after Neo is set free from the Matrix, he still gets hurt, though he knows perfectly that the Matrix is not real. This reflects the nature of reality. Reality is a relative term. But that doesn't mean it's nonsense to use it. Is it reasonable to deny reality as such? Why should we do that? Whatever happens is real within its reality sphere. In spiritual realms, we can visit real rooms that might look differently. Still, they reflect reality, but just in different ways. Should we no longer develop useful explanatory models because they are only models that do not necessarily show reality, or only show it in relative terms? In addition to a supreme, absolute reality, there are also systems with their reality that is valid and effective within this framework. Obviously, you did not find clarity about this question. For example, you write this: by way of summary on this chapter, I will emphasize my main point, which is that heaven and hell are, at the very least, most certainly states of mind. I then concede that I don't actually have a clue what reality is, so there is little gained in asking or questioning it because I wouldn't know reality if I encountered it. This is due to the many varying states of consciousness that I have experienced, and them all appearing very real. What is real, Neo? On the other hand, you state this: I have always considered those cosmic levels I entered to be as authentic as our everyday world. If they are as real to us as we think, it opens many doors into realms such as heaven and hell, purgatory, and many other dimensions of consciousness that have intrigued humanity for millennia. For individuals such as myself, I have to now seriously consider the veracity of realms like heaven and hell. Did you discard this idea finally, or not? Why would you discard it? Another quote also relates to a view that suggests reality to be accessible. What we used to think of as the entirety of our human experience has almost overnight been relegated to the outer parameters of our newfound consciousness and labeled as a fraudster and a fiction. We feel deceived and ridiculous to have been fooled for so long, living an illusion and playing a fictitious protagonist, or worse, an extra, in a socially contrived global fantasy. It's akin to Jim Carrey's character in the movie The Truman Show, when he realizes that he is the focal character in a national TV show and has been for his entire life. How does one integrate such a paradigm shift? The Truman Show is one of my favorite movies. Truman's reality is an illusion, but there is a real world with conscious beings that can see him, take part in his life to have an entertaining experience. He finds the door and leaves. Everyone is shocked, frustrated, but it doesn't help or change anything. The real world is actually quite similar to the illusional world. It's the same nature, same matter, just an artificial part of the real world. This reflects very nicely so many entities indeed, watching us and taking part in our lives enthusiastically with sympathy. And at least the astral and causal plane is not necessarily far from our experience in the physical plane. This movie does not tell us about an unexplorable, inaccessible reality, but a lively, living world that can be found and entered, which is the same with other movies like The Matrix or Dark City. On the last page, you state this: because the truth does indeed set us free. Remarkable. I use the same statement, a Bible quote, in my author's portrait. Still, you claim truth to be non-existent. When it comes to negative energetic attachments, you even insist on them being real. You write this: so, I seriously began to contemplate the idea that when we feel spiritually low, we could leave our etheric bodies open to negative energy attachments, which enter our energy field to feed on or dwell within that low-frequency life force. I'm not speaking metaphorically here, folks. I'm telling you what I know to be just as real as anything else is. And just because we cannot see their vampire monster-type forms, we can certainly see them at work in people everywhere we go. Whenever we interact with people, we can see the effects of those invisible gremlins jumping from person to person. I have witnessed for myself that when I was spiritually bereft, that's to say, during my dark night of the soul, I certainly lacked vital life force for several years, even though I was doing all the right things concerning the carnal flesh body, i.e., eating, sleeping, exercising, etc. But that wasn't enough. I still couldn't generate my normal vitality and feel whole again. There was something else going on. Something was still missing. That is precisely what I think and would always confirm. The next quote is about manifestation, or the relation between us and reality. Doesn't it sound more feasible that we are the product of a dream in the mind of a collective cosmic consciousness being dreamed into existence by ourselves? We think of gods, and we create them. We think of devils, and we create them. We think of planets, and we create them. We think of molecules, and we create them. We think of a quantum cosmos, and our molecules disappear. That doesn't sound feasible to me at all. It does not match my personal experiences at all. Before I could even make any sound with my voice, as a mostly sleeping baby in my mother's arms, I had a tunnel roller coaster hell-like out-of-body experience. As a small child, I experienced a devil standing in front of me, staring at me while I was in my bed. Not just once. You know my spiritual biography. I didn't know anything of all that. The sound current, the exorcism. It was all new to me. My life was always a discovery, and especially the last 6 years were a shocking journey from disillusionment to disillusionment. Certain essential things I strongly believed in broke right in my face. Some of my most basic attitudes were just crushed, demolished to the ground. I woke up in a world that was quite different from what I was sure she was. Still, I'm about to discover new things. How does that match to this theory of self-creation with our small human minds? And how could it ever be possible to create such complex, super-advanced, powerful beings like these so-called gods? Only the godly cosmic mind would be able to do this. Our thoughts, imaginations, attitudes, ideas, wishes, desires are absolutely nothing in comparison, completely powerless and empty. You claim heaven and hell would simply be states of mind. But why do you believe in this? Just because you never had such an experience? Another quote is that, if heaven and hell exist, then they are within my consciousness and nowhere else because, as far as I am concerned, there is nothing else. Fine. So what? That does not mean that they are less real. You claim it would be impossible to find out if an experience was real or not. I disagree. If you have the right experiences and connect the dots, you can draw conclusions that clarify it that something is real. For example, if you see how events in the spirit affect the physical world and vice versa, when you see how things relate right through the dimensions. This is, of course, complex and has to be discussed in detail. But it's not impossible to find evidence for that. Let's discuss the state of cosmic consciousness and oneness. If you say there is just one consciousness, I agree. Then I am also a part of your consciousness, or vice versa. You are a part of my consciousness, since we share the same consciousness. Yet, we are not aware of that, but separated in our perception. The existence of a single consciousness doesn't mean necessarily that all other beings are just NPCs. You say, I am God, you are God, we are all God. That means you are not more or less real than me or any other being. If you are experiencing cosmic consciousness, do you feel the presence of all other beings? Do you also feel their pain? If you are really one with anything you perceive, you must perfectly know the state of anyone in this field. But you are not even certain about me being real. Still, you do not believe in anything you have not experienced, or you even believe in that. Why kind of oneness is it? When you do not feel what others feel, you say it's just happiness. How can it be happiness, feeling one with the whole creation, if so many beings are suffering? How do you experience oneness with the cosmos? Do you feel the joy and pain of other beings? Do you feel love and compassion for them? What is the worth or meaning of this if the world does not change with you experiencing it? If you are in a cosmic consciousness, others still live, enjoy, suffer as usual. Nothing gets better. Also, the state ends eventually. Sounds more like a cool trip to me, like dreaming of oneness instead of really experiencing it. I once heard a Hindu woman tell her story about experiencing cosmic consciousness, feeling oneness, peace, and happiness. but someone or something hit or hurt her, and she suddenly fell out of her state into a normal consciousness. That was a shock. Isn't it strange that the cosmos does not protect us during such a divine experience? She also didn't say she had the impression that it was her own cosmic self doing this. If she was one with the cosmic mind, why did she not feel that it was the cosmic mind hitting or hurting her? What could be an explanation for this? Let's talk about good and evil or bad, positive or negative, right or wrong. Does duality matter? According to this quote of yours, it clearly does. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." He continued, "The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is happening inside you and every other person, too." The grandson thought about it briefly and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." In essence, it's a simple message. But how many of us can take mastery over our ego just like that? As the parable suggests, it takes time to starve the one that doesn't serve us. If we want to find God's kingdom within, first, we must evict all our unwanted guests, i.e., all the negative traits we like to throw the odd bone to. The rest of our arsenal of negative attributes must come under the same hammer of eradication before we will find the peace that Jesus spoke of. Guilt, shame, greed, pride, and so forth will need scrutinizing at some stage along our path to freedom, and so spiritually waking up is by no means a walk in the park for anyone, least of all for the lazy person, which is why sloth is a deadly sin. Spiritually, we must keep ourselves very busy cleaning our house for the eventuality that God will finally sit at our table. As you can imagine, I'm completely on your side here. Spirituality is about good and evil, replacing vices with virtues, or simply getting rid of them. Sloth is also considered to be a sin. Being lazy is comfortable, but the way up is sometimes rough, hard, narrow, difficult, painful, and needs serious effort. You know that very well. Still, you declare non-dualism to be true and rant about religion, Christianity, or other things from that side. Anyway, you share experiences that support the validity of such like teachings and practices that relate to a dualistic attitude. For example, repent. Quote, "When I did give penance before God, I reaped the release instantly. I was quite astonished that I no longer carried the weight of what I had confessed and offered remorse for. The ill feeling related to the confession had dissipated instantly. For myself, it felt incredible. Thinking further about how this works, I surmised that the power of appealing to something higher than a human being really does have merit. I realized something profound at that moment that gave rise to a greater respect for these spiritual rituals that religions have been practicing for hundreds of years. I found the whole experience immensely rewarding, and I learned a great deal about the integrity of that most emancipating of religious rituals. I also learned much about myself and how the truth really does set you free. Or what do you say about profanity? When we use profanity, we destroy our inner heaven. When we speak negatively about anything at all, we do the same. When we shout, scream, and holier, when we even think anything remotely negative, we open the doors of hell, and then that door which is ajar beckons us to follow through and embrace that darkness to its complete offering. Those negative words are literally little demons whose sole intention is destruction. Whether we verbally project them towards someone else or just think of them, they are alive and destructive. You use the F word so many times with passion and not the slightest sign of a bad conscience. You love and celebrate rude language. Obviously. How does that match? I think it does not match at all, and it doesn't make sense. I strongly agree with you, but I rarely use rude, vulgar words, intentionally. Anyway, I know that spirits can give a forceful pressure on our mental and emotional system to preferably use certain words, so strong that one must fight against this urge very consciously, decisively, and powerfully. The next essential topic is cleaning and transformation of entities. Quote, "Never in my life more than now has this saying of Jesus been more poignant." A translation to that statement could be, to purify our minds and bodies by evicting negatively charged life forms. When we do this, as spoken about previously, we create fertile ground for beauty to manifest within. All the positive human traits then begin to establish themselves, or if they already exist, can be expanded upon until we become a living Garden of Eden, where a high level of perfection exists. That's to say, we become masters at transmuting negatively charged energy, evil, into love. You name it. Exactly my word. Just one thing is missing here. Cleaning also means paying karmic debts and removing impressions in our bodies, physically as well as spiritually. Purity is crucial on the spiritual path. You write, "Due to my supernatural encounters, I now know that the world is perfect." I would agree, but still, we suffer, have to fight, and everyone has personal experiences, partially good, partially bad. Things can work out well or fail horribly. Not everything that happens or exists is good. Now, it makes sense to talk about your Jehovah experience, about the love of the Father. Let's have a look at this very meaningful experience first. After about an hour had passed whilst on this trip, I was entirely immersed in the magical realm of the spirit of the mushrooms, during which the prevailing spirit took me on a wonderful guided tour, showing me that everything was God and everything was love. The light reflecting off the stream was God. The vibrant green leaves shimmering on the trees were all created with love. The lush, soft green grass was love, and love was God. The fluffy white clouds in the bluest of skies were love and a gift from God. The life-giving star beaming down upon Mother Earth and gently warming my face and body was bursting with love and filling my mind and heart with the ecstasy of God. Everything was so profoundly God, created out of love, with love, and by love. That being said, I had never experienced any reason to feel this way on other occasions. When on shrooms, I always go with my intuition, and this time, my intuition felt conflicted. How dare I blaspheme against love under the all-seeing and hearing eyes of the Creator? For how long did I think that I could get away with it? Did my naivety know no bounds? All of these allegations were leveled at me, and a myriad more as I sobbed relentlessly, apologizing profusely, as tears streamed down my cheeks, barely able to see where I was cycling. I had committed the greatest of blasphemes. I had denied everyone's offer to love me. I had discounted poetry and songs when they spoke of the glory of love. And I had even scoffed at the very concept of love being a reality outside of anyone's fantasy world, which I opined had been invented simply as an antidote or respite from the harsh reality of the creation of a cruel world given to strife and suffering. Comment. Something strange and unusual was going on here. You were shown the nature of love that is true and essential. After you got out of the situation, caused by kind of fearful thoughts in your ego, you were experiencing regretfully your rejection and denying of love in the past. You were crying about yourself, about your horrible mistake. You felt this to be a mistake, and you regret it, did you? So why would you call this a bad experience? And why would you still deny the truth and meaning of love after this? I think this experience is a beautiful bliss of the highest quality. Was it really Yahweh who was angry with you? Or was it not just yourself? To me, it sounds as if you were shown the truth. Or maybe this darkness in you, separating you from love, was removed, and your true, innocent, good, pure, godly self fell onto the reality that you were very wrong, making a horrible mistake by rejecting love. I wouldn't call it chastising, but giving an exceptional, deep lesson. If God is angry, it's more like a kind of desperation, frustration out of love. He acts not to take away our freedom or harm us, but he wants us to evolve and learn to rise and find life, not to fall into darkness. In your case, it seems as if an evil spirit used your ego to prevent the process God wanted to give you, which was horribly frustrating for him. He had a right to do this, as evil works on you too. But evil again comes and destroys it. Is it difficult to comprehend that? Is it a bad thing? If I would ever have made such an experience, I would have done anything to find and give love and overcome all this rejection finally. It would have broken my heart. Anyway, I try my best to find and give love somehow, though it's not so easy, especially in this world. There is an urge, a tendency, to become more and more heartless here. Evil powers support that heavily, but that's another topic. Evil hates love, and it wants us to cool down. It supports our skepticism and the pain of disappointment. It tries to make us disappoint each other as much as possible to destroy our will to trust and love each other and get into relationships. This is also part of the isolation, division strategy that weakens us and makes us much more controllable and vulnerable. Back to your book again. You write, "Moreover, on an intensely personal level, I had grown exceedingly weary and mistrustful when it came to being emotionally vulnerable, so I closed that down too. I saw it like this. If we cannot adequately define something and nail it down as something concrete, how can we be so sure of its existence? Having experienced those exceedingly convincing encounters that showed me how this earth experience truly is all love, made from love, for love, and by love. Still, I had the greatest of reservations in believing it because it had never been my reality. Why did you experience love just in such a way? Because the world is so evil. Evil causes disappointment, hurt, and avoidance, so skepticism and rejection. Love in this world is like anything else, just an empty copy of the real thing. There are always conditions, and it must be maintained with effort. Lasting love needs purity, honesty, will, and a strong, loving connection to God. In our modern world, it is challenging to achieve, since evil is fighting against love so much. It wants to control us completely. But to achieve this, love must be eradicated totally. In the spiritual realms, love is much more present, and the higher it gets, the more love can be experienced. Just getting on the next level, the astral plane, makes a huge difference. The physical world is the lowest, darkest sphere, and we're in a dark era. Another quote from your book confirms you accept love as truth and the foundation of creation. Interesting that you even mention gurus respectfully, though you reject them at the same time. Here is the quote. "As I climbed the 20-minute journey to the top of the vantage point, the shroom's God showed me that absolutely everything in the cosmos is created from love. I had the clearest of revelations that this was undoubtedly true. And even though I knew that love was all around in the natural world, i.e., flora and fauna, I was very reluctant to accept that human beings also were each one created by and within love. At that point, I finally accepted what gurus have imparted for millennia, that the cosmos is love at its fundamental manifestation. At that point, I finally accepted what gurus have imparted for millennia, that the cosmos is love at its fundamental manifestation." Your rants, mostly related to Christianity or religion in general, though basically reasonable and quite amusing, seem to be exaggerated with a touch of unhealthy, unreasonable obsession that reminds me of dogmatic preachers or Bible experts, for example. Funny enough, you call your book a spiritual Bible. Wouldn't it be an insult to call your book a Bible? As someone suggested this title for one of my books, I heavily rejected this. Concerning the egregore theory, I'd like to add a few comments. You trust in the egregore theory, but do you just believe it, or did you ever have an experience that made clear this information is true? Why do you prefer to see the powers of Jesus and Jehovah to be egregores instead of real, conscious entities? How could an egregore ever have such amounts of energy to give such experiences as you had them? The egregore theory is not needed to explain many phenomena. It can be well explained by actions of conscious entities, which seems more natural, reasonable, understandable, and obvious. How to distinguish between a normal entity and an egregore? What I suppose to be true are intentionally created entity-like energy fields, acting with a certain intention given by the Creator. They are made of strong emotions and shaped by imagination, visualization. Samuel Sagan mentions pieces left after death that are also non-conscious, but still act with a certain intelligence and identity related to the according person. Sounds interesting, yet I am skeptical. Why existence and actions of entities cannot be proved according to scientific standards? It's like the simulation theory argument, stating that the matrix can always hide itself. Entities can do the same, and it makes perfect sense, does it? Quote, "You might think we have definitive evidence we're not in a simulation. That's impossible. The simulation hypothesis is non-falsifiable. If we live in a simulation, the simulators can alter any experiment to give whatever result they want. The Bible, generally, you claim the Bible to be a book filled with metaphorical stories. You write this in your book. To avoid getting raveled up within one paradox after another and dismissing the Bible as having no substance at all for us to grow from, let us not forget that the Bible is written in allegory and is nothing more than one of the first books on human psychology for the masses, using allegorical stories to subliminally enter ignorant minds as a measure of education and control. Since there is a lot of undeniable scientific evidence about the historical background of several parts, I am not convinced that your view is fair or reasonable. That doesn't mean it's a history book, of course. It also doesn't mean there are no allegories in the Bible. Perhaps both aspects can be considered at the same time. What are the arguments against that? On the other hand, seemingly to take Bible stories quite seriously. For example, the fate of humanity was now firmly in the grasp of the so-called evil one, the one who incidentally didn't actually do any wrong, but simply offered Adam and Eve the option of either remaining blissfully ignorant in the wonderful Garden of Eden or acquiring the knowledge of good and evil and being cast out into the big, wide, unforgiving world that God had also created for some ill-defined reason. Throughout the Old Testament, God exhibited his disappointment at his chosen one's actions. The crème de la crème was nothing but disappointing from the beginning to the end. The things you state about the Bible. You share stories as if they would be real. On the other hand, you strictly deny their authenticity and call them metaphorical. Does that make sense? Is it reasonable to judge a God according to a metaphoric scripture full of mistakes, tales, and all these things? Does it make sense to see always one and the same entity in what is called to be the Lord Yahweh? Is this reasonable? I could imagine that some additional information in several apocrypha is true and provides information that shows things in a different light. Did you ever seriously read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? Did you read the book of Enoch and the story of the fallen angels? To close this part, a brief comment on religion. Faith or belief is not the core of religion or spirituality. It's mainly about love, identity, will. Good and evil are fighting for us, but God respects our freedom, while evil is forceful. But why would we need to be good and clean to enter heaven? Of course, God does not want evil spirits to enter his eternal kingdom. They would spoil it and create massive trouble. To get this access, we must meet the highest standards. That's where elitism is a duty. Before I try to answer many of your 755 questions in your book, a few more small comments on this and that. What is the ego, self, soul, etc.? The ego is just with the physical body. Turning it off doesn't necessarily mean getting into the cosmic consciousness. It just means that part we are operating with when we are awake is down. Other things can come up then. This could be any other entity, spirit. You might experience cosmic consciousness then, but probably most others do not. You state several times, the spirit has led, guided, and protected you. You assume this to be the Spirit of God, but you don't know it. I assume that this was given to you by several entities, probably with a few dominating spirit beings for certain periods. Meaning of life. Metaphorically, upon hearing conversations of life's purpose and meaning, I would throw my hands around my ears to condemn such unfathomable nonsense. I would screech internally, as if listening to the greatest blaspheming towards my most precious of treasures, existence itself in the natural world. Surely, I would reason that you mustn't need a purpose or a meaning, because life itself is purpose and meaning. Every breath we take and every blink of our eyes are all the meaning we need indeed. Life is a miracle. We are a miracle. It is a miracle. People suffering from deep, severe depression indeed need a reason to go on living, and life itself is not working in such cases. People commit suicide because there is no specific, convincing reason for them not to do it. In spiritual warfare, it is important to have a motivating reason to live in mind. Life is a nightmare for many people. You are privileged to experience life this way. For me, personally, this would also not be enough. I don't deny the beautiful part, but alone this would not be enough. At least, not anymore. A very nice quote from your book is here. But when we begin to evict what I call our unwanted guests from our house of God, we start to feel the significant difference. It is akin to living in a house with about 50 disrespectful, problematic, unruly people. The house is chaotic because so many varying energy forms are reacting to each other like free radicals. One day, the hater takes the floor, and the next day, the self-righteous dude. Then, the selfish girl demands the living room for herself and her boyfriend, until the jealous guy throws a tantrum. One after the other, free radical destructive energy forms running wild and unconstrained. This is the average human mind until we finally say enough is enough and get down to some serious spiritual practice, self-discipline, and meditation. The road is long, and there are no shortcuts, but the path is increasingly rewarding and worthwhile. I'm now speaking from my personally traveled path, which stretches back almost 14 years, and so I have learned a thing or two about me, I, myself, ego, spirit, and soul. Each time we isolate and evict one of the troublesome tenants, we free up a room in our house to add to our haven of tranquility. Ultimately, we want all of our rooms back from the squatters, because once we have cleaned and decorated each vacant room, we will cautiously select new tenants of vastly higher quality, i.e., we will rent one of the rooms out to peace, another will be let to purity, the next we will offer to dedication, and another to stillness, love, compassion, etc. We will continue until all our rooms are rented to the best quality versions of ourselves, sublets. Doing this spiritual psychological work takes years, so we mustn't have any misconceptions about instant turnarounds. It's only been recently that my house has become what I am now finally at peace with. It was a long haul of spiritual devotion to evict all of my parasitically disruptive, freeloading, unwanted spirits. You are perfectly describing here what I say and write, but I mean it literally, and I'm completely and totally sure about that. What is the so-called Unterbewusstsein and the collective of it? Simply the invisible spiritual world in ourselves and outside that we share. I've seen UFOs on several occasions. I've experienced paranormal activities doubtlessly several times. There are many convincing facts that suggest things like the Anunnaki or ancient alien civilizations on Earth with UFOs are real. Science processes information to create explanatory models that are useful. Science does not necessarily claim truth. The explanations, models, theories, etc. might be improved, changed, or wiped out in due time. Sadly, there are people who don't know that or have forgotten it. The $64 billion question. So, the question I have now is, do these negative energy forms come to feed on our self-generated negative energy? Or are they attracted to us simply because our vibration is compatible with theirs? Is there, in fact, any feeding going on at all? Or is that terminology just a metaphor? This is the $64 billion question. Do those energy vampires feed on our energy or not? It would certainly feel like they do, because we quickly tend to fall lower and lower when our mind has seemingly resigned its power to destructive, dark thoughts. Answer: yes. Not only negative energy, prana from the air, sexual energy, energy flowing through the channels. Do your research on traditional Chinese medicine to see where these channels are located. It can also be bad for them if it's divine energy. Energy through eyes, with a blink. But tiredness is also created artificially by suppression or stimulating organs, parts of the brain, hormone release, etc., or simply disturbing sleep. Religious scriptures are the world's first attempts at cognitive behavioral therapy. I disagree. A therapy solves problems individually and does not create new ones or try to prevent them, as the scriptures do. Your questions, I'd like to suggest a simple idea that is a key to answers to most of your questions. I find your questions very intelligent, very well posed, meaningful, and justified. All your experiences, thoughts, feelings, perceptions are related to actions of entities in the spirit, and this is how all of them can be explained. To answer them all, missing information is needed. Still, this provides a solid foundation that allows to put them in place and see the bigger picture. What are we talking about, for example? Egregores, hypnosis, morphic resonance fields, manifestation, synchronicities, intuition, archetypes, meditation experiences, abrupt ending of out-of-body experiences, biography, automatism, getting safe through drug and sexual experiences, being charged with sexual activities, being fine inviting negative spirits, supernatural powers, dissociation, climbing Kilimanjaro, mastership, love at first sight, extraordinary strength or weakness. Of course, this list is incomplete. Spiritual warfare. What is your side? Your experiences, perceptions, insights have shown you that there is a conflict between good and evil, and it even affects you personally. You often ask for explanations why this and that happened to you. Obviously, each experience, but also your thoughts, insights, the books you read, absolutely everything started in the spirit, in the minds of entities that exactly know what they are doing and why. There is good and evil, and they fight for your soul. Still, you are, seemingly, not aware of it. They use their options, according to the laws and their attitudes, of course. Evil does many things good powers would never consider doing because it's sinful. That is giving evil a huge advantage. You probably will not agree with me here. According to your attitudes and experiences, duality is just an illusion, and evil is here to support us to grow towards God. Besides, you state that we ourselves would create evil by what we suppose or imagine being real and true, for example. You do not suppose yourself to be on a side, or maybe neutral or good, but not evil for sure. You are not evil. You do not have evil intentions, right? Still, evil does not necessarily mean that a character wants to hurt others or commit crimes. There are a few traits, habits, preferences, and aversions that are typical for negatively charged, oriented entities, also humans. Let me tell you what they are. Meat, fish, and eggs are coveted and appreciated by evil not only for their taste, but also the strengthening or arousing effects. Still, the karmic debt is quite high, and they are a burden on health. Digestion takes a long time, toxic waste and bad smell appears, and they are often contaminated with parasites that can create lots of serious trouble. Though there are differences between different kinds of meat and a few factors like quality or attitude matter, these are basically unclean and should be avoided. Intoxicating drugs open the body, the energetic field. That means any spirit or energy nearby could easily enter the body, settle there, and do any kind of damage, cause any kind of issues. Normally, sincere seekers on the spiritual path are strongly warned not to take such drugs, not to mention other possible harming effects. Alcohol is a great tool for evil to get into control of us. Sexuality is highly desired, appreciated, and abused by evil spirits for harvesting sexual energy. It also opens the door to the bodies for spirits and energies to freely move between the bodies. A focus on worldly pleasure and beauty is typical for evil spirits. They love this world a lot and praise it. Evil hates love and humans and God. It rejects love aggressively and loves to mock and provoke God. It is very typical for evil people to deny duality, call everything fine and perfect. God would always be controlling anything. Of course, evil defends Satan or evil spirits in general, claims them to be fine, good characters, or even denies their existence, while the true God is attacked, insulted, denied, and more. Other tactics are like claiming evil spirits to be illusional, created by our thoughts, expectations, beliefs, or imaginations, for example. Obsessive, exaggerated anger against religion, especially Christianity, the biblical God, or Jesus and the Bible. If you see this list, all points apply to you, more or less. Of course, the points can be put into perspective, at least in part. It can be said that high-quality meat in moderation does not harm and is justifiable. It can be said that many people benefit from drugs and bad incidents, such as mental illnesses, are rare. There is also nothing wrong with saying that sexuality or the pursuit of happiness, fulfillment, or ecstasy is not a bad thing in itself. You even state that sexual intercourse with spirits had a positive effect on you. But your experiences are not representative of the public. While you had no issues and just a gain, it doesn't mean these things are harmless for everyone. I have seen many bad examples personally. You will also find such like reports online, and I made my own experiences that clearly taught me the danger of these things. At this point, things get a bit weird, as you're in denial about other people's experiences, which doesn't make sense to me. There is, of course, a reason why you never had serious issues with such like things. You were always protected by some kind of spirit, not necessarily a good, but probably evil or negative spirit. You simply never faced the dark side of these things, because they took care you would not see this. Evil hates love, humans, and God, and as soon as a person is involved in these things too much, even potentially, it is considered an enemy and attacked, oppressed, and more. Clean people in a clean, positive, godly world could have sex and consume drugs or alcohol, and there would not be serious negative effects due to their purity and the pure, good state of the environment. Metaphorically spoken, in safe countries and areas like Japan, Ireland, or Scandinavia and Canada, many people are used to leaving their house doors unlocked, and this is fine. In other countries like the USA, South Africa, or Mexico, houses might be surrounded by massive fences, equipped with alarm installations, and even guarded by watchmen with weapons. Leaving the door unlocked is fine or bad. It just depends on the environment. Criticizing religion and its aspects is perfectly fine to a certain reasonable degree. If it gets obsessive and exaggerated, something is wrong. Seeing you defending Lucifer, even according to the Bible, in a way that looks as if Satan would defend himself through you, is a bit odd to me. Lucifer, aka Satan, is the one who tried to seduce Jesus, according to the Bible. The snake appears very obviously in satanic rituals, occult teachings, etc. The book of Adam and Eve claims the forbidden fruit to have caused instant possession, maybe even by intoxication, which allowed Satan, and other evil spirits to control them. As a result, they lost their innocence, felt shame, and fell for sexual pleasure. They instantly lost their high, pure state of consciousness. In some way, this makes sense to me. What do you think? Overall, it's about this epic conflict between God and his opponent, which is reflected by us human beings. Do you see this conflict, or do you at least even see that God has an opponent? If you said yes, what would his characteristics and qualities be? Why me? Who am I? Why did all of this happen to me? You remember our last talk. I told you about this woman you met in the astral realm, who told you she would be your sister. Here is a quote of this passage. I then asked who she was, and she replied, "A sister." I said, "What, my sister?" I thought, what, like a celestial sister? Then I considered the implications of a sister doing what she was doing, and realized she was an assister, and not a sister. How do you know that she did not say a sister, but an assister? I suggest that she indeed told you that she is a sister, and afterwards you were brought to believe it was a sister, to make you stop thinking about it. You thought about your worldly family, but you didn't consider a soul sister of your spiritual family. What family would that be? I wonder what those astral beings are doing when we don't go there to keep them entertained. Do we all have other lives going on full-time in the astral? Was that my girlfriend I met? We seem to know each other pretty well. These astral excursions are similar to some dreams in that the worlds we enter have a powerful aura of reality in their own right. I'm becoming more convinced that those dimensions are in perpetual existence, just the same as our waking environment seems to be. It appears that our spirit or celestial bodies have innumerable lives simultaneous to the earth life, and when we enter differing vibrational states, we pass over into them. Here you state that you seemingly knew each other pretty well. Does that look like an assister? And where is the missing N? Or more like a sister? Yes, I would confirm these dimensions to be in perpetual existence, and we can pass over into them with our subtle spiritual bodies within us. We have an astral causal body, but there are at least 2 to 3 even more subtle bodies for dimensions beyond the cosmic mind. When we finally get out of them, we will really be free, pure consciousness on the highest frequencies. Don't think that you can get away from me. Again, I ask you to think about that sentence of the Egyptian queen. Why would anyone say this to a person? It refers to slavery, imprisonment, or a forced bond. She tells you that you are her slave or prisoner. Then the sentence implies that you want to flee her. And last information is that she clearly does not want to let you go, but force you to stay with her. This is a very meaningful sentence. If you consider the other woman to be your sister, and the queen, and the other beautiful women, be related to this. It simply means that you are part of the royal family, or the family of the gods, since the queen is a demonic, evil, high-ranking goddess, and the gods love sexuality. You might have become a part of their family in a last life, worshiping and serving them. Most of your experiences were arrangements from this evil soul family to build you up to serve them. They just gave you what you need to believe certain things, and others not. But Jesus and his Father also visited you. They invited you, tried to convince you, pull you into their direction. Jesus burned a firework of loving energy for you because he knows you are a hard nut to crack. Yahweh also wanted to give you an unforgettable show, but evil destroyed this show by making you feel unsafe, fearful, and leave the scene too early. God knows what more he wanted to show and give you. You might never know this. Yes, the Father is also strict, but like a father, God and his opponent fight for each and every single soul. You are obviously on an advanced level, and therefore of a special value in this endgame. Do you remember when you got angry while talking to me? You were puzzled and asked where this aggression would possibly come from. It was an evil spirit within you. Every time you rant about love and God and defend his opponent, you are under his strong influence. Of course, they do not want us to connect. That's what they're fighting for. Currently, your receptivity is indeed higher for them. You're still free to decide. The decision determines your future as a soul. Once you have died, it is irreversible for a long time. You will then share the fate of those you joined by making your decision, whatever this might be. You have been given profound insights on the meaning of love. You should know that love is the cause of everything and the highest truth. God is love. Why do you still refuse to accept love? Why do you fight what you admit to being true? You refuse the existence of truth. Still you claim truth. Why? I agree that God is pure consciousness and that the cosmic mind is a manifestation of God on its own level, which is the causal plane. Still, there are more subtle dimensions and bodies. There is also a higher kind of mind, like supercosmic, and even this is still not the real deal. The gods do not want you to know this, because this is where our true home, family, freedom, and eternal life is, which is beyond their control. The cosmic mind, the godly mind, which is OM to me, is also a loving consciousness. If it's not okay, it can be healed by God's love and grace. The last part, confirmations, remarks, you claim a relation between dopamine, DMT, the mind, and God. That's a remarkable claim, since I am using and recommending music for spiritual practices. Listening to joyful, emotionally touching, moving music increases dopamine levels. And it works very nicely. You have no risks, you're always in control, it's legal and cheap, and you can use it anytime, anywhere. Music is an important key to improving and building up and deepening our relation to God and enlarge the effect of your spiritual practices. Although I wrote about this in my books and talked about it publicly on YouTube, people sadly do not see the value of this. What do you say? Did you ever try to use music for the purpose to improve the effect of your spiritual exercises? You write about the importance of health for your spiritual experiences and progress. Of course, a strong, healthy body has a high value in that sense, compared to an old, weaker, flawed body. But this reminded me of a guy who is doing levitation. He claimed that when he broke his leg, levitation was no longer possible. He needed to heal first, then it worked again. The teacher of this person now claims to know the secret about time traveling. He explains the process, which can only be accomplished in the spirit and includes creating a special type of energy vortex as a portal. Once arrived in the past, one can try to take influence on people, or maybe even on matter, depending on his power. Still, he has to fight against all other entities trying to take influence on the people. If he succeeds and travels back, the future present will be slightly different from what it was, according to the changes made. He claims that people will still remember the old timeline and therefore be confused. I think this might even be true. It would at least explain the Mandela effect in those puzzling cases. It also implies an explanation to what the Mandela effect takes place. People prove time traveling to be real to the masses. The teacher's name is Ernst Vater, if you are interested. Your explanation about the brain sides and their functions matches perfectly. That sound current from the left side will charge negative energy, while from the right side, it's positive, divine energy. Final thoughts. This in-depth review is mainly concerned with the questions your book raises. Of course, this is not exhaustive by far, but it should be deep enough for now. It was essential for me to provide this level of attention and support for your work that I appreciate and respect with honest sympathy for you as a spiritual warrior as well as an author, man, and human being. I know what it means to write and publish such meaningful things, then being unseen, ignored, not taken seriously, not being supported or appreciated and rejected. When I heard your frustration and disappointment about the lack of interest, serious feedback, I felt you. You are not alone. I know I'm anything but perfect. I'm a wanderer on the path, slowly but surely proceeding, step by step. This is my offer, and now I'm done. Do with it whatever you want. Best regards, may the cosmic mind and consciousness be with you. Edward.